Ryan, Ryan.
Yes.
Matrix Reloaded. I watched this for the first time properly.
Yes.
Just this past Wednesday.
And what did you think of it? Because the Matrix, the two Matrix sequels that rounded off the trilogy have always been divisive and have always been, in my opinion, it takes multiple viewings to really appreciate them. The first time I watched them, I wasn't a really big fan of them at all, really. But over subsequent viewings, I've really warmed to them. So I'm very curious to know if you liked them right on a go.
Well, on a first watch of The Matrix Reloaded, I must say I did enjoy it. I think on multiple viewings I will enjoy it slightly more, but I do have my issues with it. While I think it retains a lot of what the original film had, it's trying maybe a little too much to add too much to the world of The Matrix and even some of the abilities that they have. And, you know, some of the world building. One of the main things that comes to my mind is you've got is it the Mariturian? What's his name? The
Merovingian.
The Merovingian.
Yeah, the Frenchman. Yes.
You have the Frenchman, who's a character who kind of works as almost a living tribunal, if you will, of the Matrix, in which he's lived and surpassed in all versions of the Matrix as he is a program, and has lived and worked and designed different aspects of each of these Matrixes. As it's revealed in the film that there are multiple Matrixes and they all work within different ways. And with that, they introduced that stuff like werewolves and vampires and aliens and ghosts are technically all real.
Yes.
Because they were all glitches and issues from previous Matrixes.
Yes.
And the Frenchman has some of these dudes and is just like chilling with them as his bodyguards and their henchmen. Which creates some interesting stuff. You, of course, have the twins. Who are these like twin ghost dudes who are pretty damn awesome in the film. But you are like, what's going on here?
Yeah, how did we get here?
How do we get here? How do we go from like, I get it's a computer and you can really realistically do whatever you want, but you're going a bit crazy now. Also, The Matrix Reloaded, oddly just sexual throughout the entire film.
I agree, yeah.
Like, the entire film. The opening scene on Zion is interesting. Involves some NFTs, if you will. A good Twitter joke there. And it gets a bit wild. And then there's an interesting scene again with the Frenchman and a lovely looking cheesecake.
Oh, yes.
A little bit too nice, I think, that cheesecake
a long 3.5 minute metaphor.
A 3.5 minute metaphor and conversation in which the Frenchman gives a lady a cake that makes her a little too excited. And of course, Monica Bellucci requesting a kiss from Neo, and then saying it wasn't good enough and really requesting a kiss from Neo. It's all very strange and odd, but at the same time you're kind of going with it.
There's a charm to everything in the film.
There is.
I've never been a fan of the Zion stuff at the beginning, and then even more so in Revolutions. I don't know what it is, the Zion stuff. I love the world building, however, I just think it's a bit... It's not as interesting because I feel like we've seen like a lot of the things that's presented in it in other films. Yeah. Not necessarily afterwards, but of the time even then. I'd say the Star Wars prequels as well, they feel like Zion-esque in a sense.
Yeah, it's interesting because any film could do Zion, but because you're putting Zion in a film like The Matrix, which features The Matrix, I'm instantly disinterested because it's not The Matrix, which is upsetting because I do love the diesel punk aesthetic that Zion has.
Absolutely,
the mechs, the tubes, the wires, the
storyline is
dirty,
really
oil-filled world that they have, which is just trying to survive in this machine world. It is good. It is good stuff, and I even kind of like seeing it more in Revolutions. It's a little too much in Revolutions, I think, when you're giving us a full-on Zion versus Sentinel war, which, albeit, has some of the most stunning visuals and visual effects I've seen for 2003, and looks literally outstanding. And as much as I'm enjoying watching, these mechs with guns shoot these, big sentinel creatures,
octopus-like
sentinel creatures, I'm going, it's cool, but I could
After 20 minutes, your brain kind of shuts off, and you've got 20 minutes to go. Yeah,
and you're like, give me more Neo and Trinity. What's going on here?
They finally show up again, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm watching the Matrix.
Yeah, you're watching the Matrix, and these guys are here. So it falters a little bit there in the third film, but I like the second film a fair bit. I even like the Agent Smith stuff, and I mean, we get more Agent Smith stuff.
Yeah, I've came to love that scene, to be honest.
I love that Agent Smith goes from just being a really, really cool villain character in the first film to the literal downfall of the Matrix in the second and third. And I love the relationship they build between him and Neo, how they are equals, one can't exist without the other. It's all interesting stuff. And I like how it culminates in Revolutions 2.
Yes, yeah.
I think it's very cool.
Everything that they add in Reloaded and Revolutions, I really like thematically and story-wise. I think it's really interesting. And it does add to the idea of like, well, you could watch these films over and over and over again and get something new each time. The one that I always go back to is the architect. The architect shows up in like one scene near the end of Reloaded, and everyone that has watched this film always knows about the architect and the fact that they're like, what was he saying? What was he saying? And after you watch it 5 times, you finally are able to crack the code, and you realize that the architect isn't saying anything confusing. He's just a really annoying guy trying to mess with Neo. I love that characterization because it's something that you don't get the first time because you're actively trying to figure out what he's saying. Yeah. But that's the whole point.
It's funny. The scene ended and Ryan paused it and looked at me and went, do you understand what you're saying? I went, nope. I'll explain it.
But yeah, I love that scene now. And that's came about after many rewatches.
I just like seeing Keanu kind of freak out in all the monitors every once in a while.
Yeah, that is good well, yeah.
There's one complaint I have about both films in terms of the Matrix action scenes.
They're way more balletic in this.
What was that word?
Balletic. Balletic.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like it's like dance more so than anything else.
It is, and some people would see that as a positive. Personally, I dislike it and actually see it as a bit of a downfall for the film. I think it's too floaty.
Yeah.
I like how harsh and rough and hard-hitting a lot of the action is in the first film. It's all well choreographed and it's done, and people do go flying through, windows and getting thrown about the place and stuff. It's good, but it all still feels grounded in some sort of reality. But because they're all unlocked and they all have the powers of the Matrix now, they're flying about, they're floating about, they're jumping from one place to another, everything's slow-mo, a lot of bullet time, a lot of putting your hand up, stopping bullets and stuff like that. It's kind of...
It runs into the same problems that every Superman film has, in which once Superman learns all of his powers and has mastered his powers, then what really has he got that's like... He's too good, in a sense. Neo in Reloaded and Revolutions is to the point where he can beat 1,000... Agent Smiths, and you're like, well, it's fun to watch, but after a while, you're not
there's no challenge.
It's just a chess match.
Yeah,
you're just going the motions.
There's the opening of Reloaded features Trinity doing some pretty cool stuff. She rides a motorcycle off a thing, and you get a really cool shot where she jumps off it, which is awesome. They're cool, but it is also that idea of we gotta have bullet time. We gotta have this jumping out windows. Trinity's gotta look cool CG and stuff. And it's all a bit like, well, you're kind of, at this point, you are ticking boxes.
Yes.
And it feels like you are just doing things because everyone went, hey, they're cool for the first Matrix film, which is something Resurrections makes fun of.
Yes.